Hi, my name is Andrea Morgan. I'm 36 years old, and if there's one thing I never thought I'd experience, it was my own mother humiliating me in front of our entire family on her birthday. The celebration was supposed to be warm and joyful. The dining hall glowed with string lights and floral centerpieces, the air filled with the smell of roasted chicken and frosted cake. Laughter floated across the tables as relatives clinked glasses and shared old stories. It was Margaret's 65th birthday, and nearly every branch of the family had gathered to honor her. I sat quietly near the middle of the room, wearing a simple navy blue dress, doing my best to stay unnoticed. For most people, birthdays are times of joy and recognition, but for me, family gatherings carried a sting. I had learned over the years that blending into the background was safer than being pulled into the spotlight. Still, deep down, a small part of me hoped maybe this year would be different. Maybe, just once, my mother would see me for who I truly was. The clinking of glasses grew louder as my mother, Margaret, rose from her seat at the head table. A hush of anticipation spread across the hall, the kind of silence that usually signals something heartfelt is about to be said. She smiled graciously, soaking in the admiration, her champagne flute lifted high. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began, her voice carrying with practiced ease. "It means the world to have my family and friends gathered here to celebrate this milestone." Applause followed, and I joined in, though my hands felt heavy as I clapped. I'd been through too many of these speeches to mistake them for anything but carefully polished performances. Margaret went on, listing relatives one by one, pointing out their accomplishments: Robert's promotion at work, Gloria's volunteer projects, Martha's new grandchild. Everyone cheered at the right moments, laughter and approval echoing around the room. Then her gaze shifted, and I felt it settle on me like a spotlight. "And, of course," she said with a sweet smile that didn't reach her eyes, "my daughter Andrea. She tells people she's in the Air Force." A ripple of amusement passed through the crowd. I felt heat rush to my cheeks, but I kept my posture still, hands folded tightly in my lap. "She works at a base, some kind of administrative role, I think. Filing reports, managing schedules. Important in its own way, of course, but not exactly the cockpit of a jet fighter." A few chuckles slipped out, even though others glanced at me uncomfortably. My daughter Olivia, perched beside me, frowned. She tugged on my sleeve and whispered just loud enough for nearby ears to catch, "But Mom, don't you fly planes?" Her innocent question sliced through me sharper than anything my mother had said. The room grew more awkward as a few guests exchanged glances. Margaret pressed on, either not hearing or choosing to ignore. "We had such high hopes when Andrea started at the academy," she continued, her tone tinged with disappointment. "But some people just aren't cut out for the pressure of real military life. Thankfully, she's found steady work, even if it's not what we once dreamed." The applause that followed was half-hearted, but Margaret raised her glass triumphantly anyway. I sat frozen, feeling the old familiar ache of being diminished, once again, by the woman whose pride I had longed for all my life. The silence after her toast was broken by my Aunt Martha, who leaned forward in her chair with a tipsy grin. "Didn't Andrea wash out of pilot training?" she said loudly enough for several nearby tables to hear. I remember Margaret saying she couldn't handle the pressure. My stomach tightened, but I stayed perfectly still. This wasn't new. It was the same chorus I'd heard for years, rehearsed so many times that even my relatives believed it as fact. "That's right," my mother chimed in, nodding with a sigh. She started strong, but when it came to the real challenge of flying combat jets, it was just too much. Not everyone is built for that kind of responsibility. Still, she has a place on the base, and we're grateful for that. I could feel eyes turning toward me, some pitying, some judgmental. Uncle Robert leaned over to Gloria, his voice carrying farther than he realized. "Well, at least she stuck with something. Could have been worse." Gloria, never one to keep her opinions private, added in confusion. "Wait, I thought she dropped out completely? That's what Margaret told us years ago." The words sank deep, each one pressing against the weight I'd carried since my early 20s. Every achievement I'd worked for, Every deployment, every mission, every medal, erased with a few careless sentences spoken by the people who should have known me best. I glanced down at Olivia. She was watching me with wide, troubled eyes, her young mind trying to reconcile the grandmother she adored with the mother she trusted. The question on her face was clear. Who is telling the truth? I wanted to say something, to stand up and correct them all, but the years of silence pressed heavier than my voice could lift. Instead, I sat there, motionless, letting their assumptions hang in the air, suffocating yet familiar. As the chatter rolled on, my thoughts drifted back through the years, every word from my mother and aunts pressing on old bruises. I had learned, early in my career, that nothing I accomplished would ever be enough for them. When I graduated from the academy, Margaret had sighed and said, "Well, most cadets make it through. Let's see how long you last." When I earned my pilot wings, she dismissed them as probably just ceremonial. The first time I deployed overseas, she told people, "Don't worry, Andrea isn't flying combat. She's just helping with logistics." Each milestone had been whittled down until even I stopped trying to share them. Why celebrate medals if your own mother calls them participation trophies? Why talk about dangerous missions when your family insists you've never left a desk? I swallowed hard, blinking against the sting in my eyes as Olivia leaned her head against my arm, silently reminding me of the only recognition that truly mattered. Still, it hurt. For 20 years, I had carried their disappointment like a shadow trailing behind me. I told myself, again and again, that their blindness didn't change the truth of my career. I knew the lives I'd protected, the missions I'd flown, the crews who trusted me with their safety. But in rooms like this, under the weight of my family's assumptions, it was easier to let them believe the lie than to fight for the truth. The evening was winding into that noisy rhythm of chatter and clinking glasses when a new voice broke through the hum. I looked up to see a young man in uniform stepping cautiously into the hall. He must have just come off duty, his Air Force dress blues crisp, his hair still neatly cut to regulation. I recognized him instantly, though I doubted he expected to see me here. Lieutenant Adam Hayes, one of my junior officers. His eyes widened the moment they found mine, and he froze mid-step as though he'd stumbled into classified territory. "Ma'am," he said, his voice carrying farther than he intended. Several heads turned toward him. "Forgive me. I didn't realize you would be here." A ripple of curiosity moved across the room. My mother, perched like a queen at the head table, narrowed her eyes. "And who might you be, young man?" she asked with the polite sharpness of someone who already disapproved. Adam straightened, cleared his throat, and replied, "Lieutenant Adam Hayes, ma'am. I serve under." His gaze flicked to me, and I saw the conflict in his eyes. He knew my silence with family wasn't accidental. But the damage was done. People were listening now, watching, waiting. I felt my pulse quicken, my heart thundering in my chest. "Under whom?" Martha prodded, leaning forward with eager suspicion. Adam looked back at me once more, searching for permission. I gave the smallest shake of my head. But then Olivia spoke up, her young voice clear in the awkward quiet. "Do you know my mom?" That single question changed everything. Adam smiled gently at her, then turned back to the crowd. "Yes. I know your mother very well. She's my commanding officer. Major Andrea Morgan, fighter pilot, squadron leader." The room fell silent. Forks paused midway to mouths. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. My mother blinked, her lips parting slightly, as though she couldn't process the words. Adam continued, his voice steady now. "Your mother has logged more combat hours than anyone in our unit. She's led us on missions I'll never forget. Her leadership is the reason I, and many of us, are standing here today." The weight of his words rippled outward, sweeping across the room like a shockwave. For the first time in 20 years, my family saw me not as the failure they had imagined, but as the officer I truly was. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the hall, disbelief twisting across familiar faces. I felt every pair of eyes on me, their weight heavier than any combat gear I'd ever carried. My mother stood abruptly, her voice sharp. "That's not possible. Andrea doesn't fly jets. She told us she works on the base, behind a desk. Adam didn't flinch. With respect, ma'am, that's not true. She's our squadron leader. We'd follow her into any mission. She's one of the most skilled pilots I've ever seen. The color drained from Margaret's face. Andrea, she demanded, turning to me, why didn't you ever tell us this? I rose slowly, my knees steady though my heart hammered. Because every time I tried, you brushed it aside. When I graduated, you said it wasn't impressive. When I earned my wings, you called it symbolic. When I deployed, you told everyone I was just filing papers. You decided who I was a long time ago, and you never once bothered to ask if you were wrong. The room grew eerily quiet. Aunt Gloria frowned in confusion. But Margaret, you always told us she dropped out of training. I never said that. My mother shot back defensively. I only said she couldn't handle the pressure. Which is the same thing. I cut in, my voice calm but unyielding. You assumed failure, and every success I achieved, you explained away. Uncle Robert shook his head, struggling to take it in. Wait, you're saying you actually fly combat jets? You lead missions? Before I could answer, Adam spoke again, his tone sharpened with conviction. She doesn't just fly them, sir. She commands them. Major Morgan has earned more decorations than most pilots see in a lifetime. Bronze Star, Distinguished Flying Cross, multiple commendations. She's the reason we succeed. She's the reason we come home. The words hung heavy, echoing in the stunned silence. I glanced around, seeing shock, shame, and something else, an awakening. For the first time, they were being forced to see me clearly. The silence in the hall was suffocating. My mother's lips trembled, her eyes darting from me to Adam as if searching for a loophole that would make his words untrue. But the truth was undeniable, hanging in the air heavier than any toast or speech she had ever given. Olivia broke it first. She tugged on my hand, her small voice cutting through the tension. I knew you were a real pilot, Mom. Her words weren't loud, but they carried more weight than any metal pin to my chest. My throat tightened as I squeezed her hand gently. Margaret's face crumpled. The sharp edges of authority slipped, replaced by something raw, regret. Andrea, she whispered, almost pleading, I didn't know. I thought I was protecting you from disappointment. I thought I was being realistic. I shook my head slowly. No, you were protecting yourself from being wrong. There's a difference. Every time I achieved something, you found a way to dismiss it, to make it smaller so you never had to change your mind about me. And I stopped fighting for your approval because nothing I did was ever going to be enough. Tears welled in her eyes, the proud, unflinching woman suddenly fragile. I never meant to hurt you. Can you forgive me? I held her gaze, my voice calm but steady. I forgave you a long time ago. The question is, can you forgive yourself? The room was silent again, this time not with disbelief, but with something heavier, recognition. My aunts and uncles lowered their eyes, ashamed. Martha wiped her face, no longer smug but shaken. Robert muttered, all these years, we had no idea. Adam stepped forward, his voice firm but respectful. With all due respect, sir, ma'am, Andrea isn't just a pilot. She's the kind of leader people would follow anywhere. She's earned loyalty most officers only dream of. And she's done it all while her own family failed to see her for who she is. My mother covered her mouth with her hand, tears spilling freely now. Olivia leaned against me, her eyes shining with pride. For the first time in decades, I felt seen, not because they finally admitted the truth, but because the truth had spoken loud enough that they could no longer deny it. The heaviness in the room began to shift. Where there had been ridicule and doubt, there was now silence filled with something new, respect. For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible at a family gathering. Adam cleared his throat. If I may, Major Morgan will be promoted next month. She's taking command of a fighter wing. Her ceremony is open to family, and it would mean a great deal to her unit if you were there to see her off. Dozens of eyes turned back to me. Margaret looked stunned, her tears streaking her cheeks. You're being promoted? Yes. I answered simply. It's official next month. I'll be a lieutenant colonel. Olivia gasped, her whole face lighting up. Mom, that's amazing. She threw her arms around me, her joy pure and untainted, exactly the recognition I needed. Margaret's voice was shaky. Would you want us there? I studied her face, the same face that had dismissed me for decades. For a moment, I saw the mother I had always wanted her to be, vulnerable and open, stripped of judgment. I'd like that, I said quietly. But if you come, don't come to measure me against your expectations. Come because you finally see me for who I am. She nodded, unable to speak, and I knew the message had landed. As the crowd slowly dispersed, people approached me differently, questions in their eyes, tentative congratulations on their lips. Some wanted to know about jets, others about medals, most just wanted to apologize without saying the words outright. But standing there, I realized something vital. Their recognition was nice, but it was never necessary. For 20 years, I had carried the burden of their assumptions, letting them define me in their own small way. Yet none of it had ever changed the truth. I was a fighter pilot. I was a leader. I was someone who had earned the trust of those who mattered most, the men and women who would follow me into the sky without hesitation. As I drove home later that night, Olivia asleep in the back seat, I thought about my mother's trembling apology and Adam's fierce defense. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had spent my career flying some of the most advanced aircraft in the world, defending a nation that might never know my name. But the greatest victory of all was simply being seen, finally, undeniably, by the people who thought they knew me best. Sometimes the most profound revenge isn't shouting the truth. It's living it so completely, so undeniably, that eventually the world, and even your own family, has no choice but to see you as you truly are. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It's silent victories that force the world to open its eyes. But tell me, if you were in my place, would you forgive them or walk away forever? This is Revenge Repeat.